Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Shawn Hackett. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. Also, Arrow, if you're looking for a great place to find great tools for your salespeople to sell more stuff, check out Arrow at heyarrow.com, and you'll find all the stuff you need right there. Well, this is kind of a special edition of the Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Shawn Hackett because Shawn is actually in Brazil right now, and he's taking his coffee tour, kind of seeing what's going on out there. And Shawn had breaking the action here, and you got a minute to jump on the on a call with us here. So, Shawn, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm in Varginha, Brazil right now, right in the heart of the coffee belt, and we've done about 1,200 miles so far. And I got another 3 days, but it's been really a great trip talking with agronomists, farmers, and just seeing the effects of drought, frost, and where things are at with the rains and everything else. So we're gathering a lot of information that I don't think one could get any other way. So,
all right. So you've been there for how many days? You say you've been there so far?
This is, let's say, Thursday. We've been here 4 days so far.
All right,
4
so
days.
your fourth day in country there, and you're making your tour. What are your assumptions so far?
Well, I mean, I think you have to really think that we've had this unprecedented combination of drought and then really 2 hard frosts and 1 soft frost all in 1 month's time. And that combination has really done tremendous damage to not only the coffee crop's potential for last year, but it also is doing a lot of damage for the coffee crop for this year. And there's nothing that we see with the current flowering, with the current buds that are forming, the rains that have fallen, that outlook is really going to change. The damage has been done. And the only thing that good weather can do now, Casey, is just stabilize the crop at where it's at, and hopefully take it through to the end. But in our view, there's really no way to rehabilitate what's happened because of the unprecedented nature of what we're seeing. And so it's pretty one part it's pretty interesting from an agronomy point of view, but it's also pretty sad when you're looking at farmers that were looking at tremendous production, looking at zeros on their farms. It's pretty heartbreaking at times, I have to tell you. It really is. So
yeah, it is. It's a tough situation to be in. So have you had a chance to see anything else down there as far as crop wise goes? Have you seen, looked at any of the corn that's out there that's being harvested, or any of the soybeans are being planted, anything like that?
I have not had a chance. I do believe we'll have some chance to do some of this over our next 3 days with where we're going. Mm-hmm. Where we were is primarily coffee country. It's just it's really that's where they grow the coffee. But I think I believe where we're going here in the next few days, we'll have some opportunities to see some corn and such forth along with the coffee. So I'm hopeful that I can get some reporting back on that.
So what's the difference between the coffee area and the corn and soybean areas? I mean, is it a soil content? Is it a grown on the side of a mountain, or what's the difference here in the two pieces?
Coffee tends to be grown on higher elevations, on cliffs.
Gotcha.
Something that's not really going to be conducive for the corn crop.
A little tough to get a combine through there.
So it's pretty hard to get a combine through there for sure.
Yeah.
So it's really a different soils too. I mean, you really don't grow. I'm not saying there aren't places where they can grow coffee and corn, but the high production areas of coffee are really not growing where corn is grown. It's just, or soybeans for that matter. So.
Yep. Okay. So in the next coming days, what are you going to see that you haven't seen so far?
I mean, we just want to make sure we do a thorough look at everything. I mean, we kind of started in the center. We went over kind of the southwest into the center, and now we just want to make sure we cover all the areas that we're not. We don't want to be over. I want to be very fair. There is some good coffee. Doesn't mean every single acre is bad coffee. There's some really, really good coffee out there. I don't want anyone to misconstrue that there's not going to be a crop. There is going to be a crop. It's just going to be substantially below potential. And this was the on-season year where they were supposed to have the big production to overcome the deficit from last year. And there's absolutely no way that's going to happen.
Yep.
Not going to happen.
Yep.
So
that's I guess so. What you're saying is what your hypothesis is. You're kind of proving it to be true. I guess.
Well, what we did back in late August, early September is we kind of did a statistical model of what we thought production would look like. Mm-hmm. We went back at past frosts and we said, all right, how much damage was done. We looked at the frost, the triple frost, looked at the areas that were impacted, also looked at the drought, lack of vegetative growth, lack of nodal formation, and we said, but also understanding that farming is done better today than it was 30 years ago. We have better practices. We have hardier trees. So we put a kind of a fudge factor back on, saying, we probably aren't going to perform as poorly as those past crops. And when we did that whole statistical model, we came in with a crop around 40 million bags. An on-season crop in Brazil should be 50 to 55. Oh, okay. So so everything that we see kind of supports this number. I don't really feel that right now that the crop's worse than that estimate materially, and I don't think that the crop is materially better than that estimate. I think somewhere 40 million, give or take, a million either way. I think right now, and of course, lots of weather still to go, Casey. Mm-hmm. All we've done now is we've had some good rain here in October. The flowers have bloomed. They've set some buds, but we still have to get through the cherry formation stage, and that the cherries really start to form in December, and then they form and grow in January, February, and March, and that has a lot to do with how big the coffee beans will or will not be. If they're smaller, it takes a lot more coffee to fill a bag. Mm-hmm. If they're larger, it takes a lot less coffee beans to fill a bag, and that has a lot to do with what your yield is, how many bags per hectare you're going to get. Yeah. Our view has been that we would not have a repeat of last year, that we would have much more ample rainfall in the first part of the growing season, and that has proven correct. We have a very wet October. November looks like good rainfall, very good for grain markets, very good for planting, really, really good start. However, we do believe that as La Nina weakens in January, February, and March, and begins to dissipate, we do think that the risks of a drier weather pattern will return. So right now, with the coffee crop from last year being so small, there's absolutely no room for any more adverse weather. So we're going to we're going to put out our formal forecast mid-late November. We just need a few other metrics to kick in, but we think it could be a drier January, February, March, and that could be really something that could really take this coffee market and really juggernaut it to something much higher. And remember, second crop corn, Brazil desperately needs a big safrinha corn crop this year. Mm-hmm. Now, the soybeans are in early, and they're going to be harvested early, so we're not going to be worrying about delayed planting based upon the soybean crop, because they plant the beans behind the soybeans for the second crop corn or the safrinha crop corn. But if we get into a hot, dry pattern, doesn't mean it'll be as bad as last year, but it may not deliver on the big rebound that they're hoping and praying for down there. And so we kind of think we would be following that period. Some excitement could be generated, at least in the corn and the coffee market, we think. So.
Yep. So I want to point one thing out that you talked about on this podcast probably 4 weeks ago. Yeah, right about 4 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, and you were talking about how in the West that the drought was over, right, and that it was going to be going to start seeing more moisture coming and those kind of things. I did read an article this morning about fear of landslides and flowing debris, I guess is how they put it, which I'm guessing that's the same as a landslide in California. So talk about that a little bit and what you see happening there.
Remember, we already had this huge blizzard, over the last few weeks out west that dumped tons of snow, and now behind it we're getting this. It's almost a mini bombogenesis storm, and from central to northern California into Washington, into Oregon, and a little further west. Some of the worst areas of the drought area. Mm-hmm. They're getting flooding, torrential rains, high winds, inches upon inches in hours, that kind of stuff, and so the mudslides. We mentioned that we'd be talking about mudslides before too long, and of course most of the weather forecasters just a few weeks ago were saying the drought was going to continue as far as the eye could see. But the La Nina Modokai that we've talked about on your program before is different. And it pushes moisture into the west instead of taking it away from last year. That's why Brazil is wet right now. That's why the west is starting to get moisture that it didn't get last year. And we think that trend is going to. They're getting a lot of snow in the Sierras. It's part of this different La Nina cycle that we're in. And as the La Nina dissipates, Casey. We talked about how this might impact drought in Brazil in the first quarter, but as it dissipates, the spring's going to get much wetter. And of course, because it's a late ending winter that we're anticipating, we're just not going to be talking about drought out west. We're going to be talking about things like mudslides, record snowpack melt, rivers overflowing, flooding in the. Those are going to be the sound bites that are going to be worrying the market. Oh my gosh, how are we going to get this crop planted? We already planted it. We have to replant it, prevent plant. Oh my gosh, we're going to get a late season frost. What does that mean for the winter wheat crop? All these things are going to be what we're going to be talking about as we move into the springtime. A very, very different weather pattern. And I would be doing your program a disservice if we didn't talk about a developing stratospheric warming event that we've talked about, I think, on your show before.
Yeah, just last time we talked about it, you're bringing that up. Yeah.
So a sudden stratospheric warming event is when you get this very, very warm air over in the stratosphere of the Arctic, and when that happens, it causes a high pressure system to build, and that high pressure system builds strong enough, it will force the cold air, destabilize the polar vortex, cause the jet stream to do this amplified meridional structure, and it forces a polar vortex intrusion into the lower latitudes, whether it's Europe, the US, that sort of thing. We mentioned that we thought we would see probably one of the earliest stratospheric warming events ever since we've been looking at this stuff. Yeah. And sure enough, right now it is developing. In fact, I'll be putting a podcast tonight out to subscribers to talk about it. But the stratosphere, there's something called 10 HPA and 30 HPA. That's the pressure. The higher up you go, the lower the pressure. The lower you go, the higher the pressure. So that's kind of like your thickness of the stratosphere, that if you have warming going on both the top and the bottom, you have a very healthy stratospheric warming event. Both 10 HPA and 30 HPA, when you look at the measurements, are now surging well above normalcy for what they're supposed to be. And if you look at the upper airflow pattern of the temperature, we're going to have a full-blown, unadulterated southern stratospheric warming event by November 1st. And it would be the earliest we've ever seen that. I think I believe mid-December was the earliest we've ever had before. Now, it doesn't guarantee a polar vortex, but it dramatically increases the chances. And usually if you're going to get there's a lag effect. So when a sudden stratospheric warming kicks in, within 30 to 40 days, you're likely to get this upper air pattern to destabilize. So last year, for example, we got one of these late December into January, and we said, you know what? Based upon this lag, we should be looking for one of these in the first part of February. Boom, we got it. So we are going to. This is happening. It's happening. It's coming, and it's going to fully express itself in early November. We would be looking for a polar vortex potential in the first half of December. Could be the latter part of November, but that would be the biggest high risk window to get this sudden start warming event to trigger one of those events, of which we think is going to be repeated over and over. We've been warning that November would be the transition from the warm October we were predicting to this long, early starting, late ending winter. And right now it's verifying exactly as we've been mentioning with you and in our reports for months now. So keep an eye on this. You're going to hear all your weather guys, whoever you listen to out there, you're going to be hearing about this sudden stratospheric warming event everywhere in about another 2 weeks. And you're going to hear this over and over again. And it's part of why we're going to get storms like we're seeing out in California. Mm-hmm. These cyclones, these bombogenesis, these winter kind of storms that are just out of sight, more violent than normal. It's part of the whole cycle. So
by the first week of November, we could see a serious snowstorm of sorts come through the west somewhere.
Well, it means that when that happens, the whole upper airflow is getting screwed up. Okay. The whole thing is getting destabilized. So it's kind of like saying, you're on a plane and everything's fine, and all of a sudden they turn the seatbelt light on because turbulence is coming in and you're going all over the place. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen here in another 2 weeks. The atmosphere is going to be jumbling all over the place, and when that happens, the opportunity for air masses to clash with each other and amplified jet stream to clash with each other increases. And so I would really be thinking like mid-November onward. I'd really be looking at, because there's a lag, really be looking at a lot of storminess, a lot of snowfall, a lot of inclement weather, and potential for some pretty severe potential polar vortex intrusions, especially the first half of December. It's our first shot at one of these. And once again, it's about a month earlier than we've ever seen before.
Right.
So,
well, the positive thing about this, Shawn, it's pheasant season. So this bad weather's coming at the perfect time, so that the pheasant hunting is even better than it normally is. So I'm super jacked right now. Super jacked. All right.
Happy times.
It's good times, yeah. Now I'm sure other people are going to be cussing me when this happens, but nonetheless, it's going to work out well. But I think there's so now, guys, pay attention to this, because the reason I pointed this out was on this show, Shawn has talked about this particular event happening in mid-November through December since summer, July,
Yeah.
So I mean, this, and then now that we're talking about the landslide thing in California, that just triggered my mind this morning when I was reading through news and those kind of things. I saw that on there. I was like, man, Shawn talked about this exact thing happening. So if you're listening to this and you want to subscribe to what Shawn has, Shawn, how do people subscribe to your newsletter and your podcast and stuff?
Our website is Hackett, HACKETT, advisors.com. Lots of free videos and sample reports and white papers for your listeners to get a good idea of what we do and how our natural climate cycle algorithm may allow them to, make better decisions.
So what I'm getting at is the stuff he's been talking on here from when I thought he was wearing a tinfoil hat to where he's at now is actually happening. So now it's starting to make more sense, Shawn. So, pay attention to what Shawn says. Let's, subscribe to his stuff. Go to the website, check those things out, because I'm telling you, it's well worth your time to do that. So, Shawn, I appreciate you being on the podcast.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm really glad I was able to get a good connection here in Brazil, and maybe I can find a way to do this before I go home on Thursday night. Again with you, maybe I can get here and get you on a Tuesday evening or something from one another hotel.
Yep, so that'd be great. Stay away from all the anacondas and stuff down there. There's some big ones, so be careful while you're down there. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm going to definitely watch my step.
Right on. Well, Shawn, thank you for being on the podcast. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast. Also, go to MovingIronLLC.com, where you're going to find everything that has to do with Moving Iron Podcast. From the entire libraries there, all the Moving Iron blogs that are posted are there. Also, the information for the Moving Iron Summit that'll be coming up here pretty soon. Got a few things dialed in, and I'll have some dates and venues put together. So, with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Shawn Hackett. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to AxonTire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here.